Welcome everyone. So I'm going to give a short presentation on highly skilled Indian women academics in Dubai. I've obviously focused on this project because I'm very much working in higher education, and I'm have a real sort of insight into the United Arab Emirates, Dubai specifically. And I was very intrigued by the experience of highly skilled Indian women, as they are quite a large demographic within Dubai. So I thought that this could be quite relevant to share at this conference that's focusing on highly skilled migrant women. So in particular, I'm looking at their gendered experiences and identity reconstruction. Yeah, you can, there we go. So I'm going to, in the presentation, I'm going to focus a little bit on the literature that's out there in this subject area, and just to sort of highlight, some of the main studies, and then specifically talk about the United Arab Emirates and the migrant labour market, particularly the characteristics that I've noticed there. And then really my case study is really looking at transnational education, and I'll explain a little bit more about what that actually is, and how De Montfort University, Dubai, is participating in transnational education with the opening of a branch campus in Dubai. And then obviously through that as well, looking at the academic landscape in the UAE and looking at the appointment of new teaching teams, and core to that has been highly skilled Indian women as a particular category. And I want to also, as I noticed that we're looking at SDG, sustainable development, I also wanted to just highlight the link with sustainability, and how we can use a nexus approach. The United Nations are very interested in the way that we use, multiple SDG goals as a way to interlink them to problem solve. And I wanted to bring some of that as well to the way that I show you today. We've been doing this within our teaching practices, and myself as well, I've been very much involved with how we can actually address gender equality, but through problem solving around multiple sustainable development goals. So the research landscape is really extensive around migration trends in the UAE. There is, a lot of research that's been done in terms of policy papers and statistical analysis, just a plethora of activity in this area. And very interestingly, a lot of it does focus on low-skilled migrant workers, and also low-skilled migrant women workers. Particularly in communities like the Filipino community, and also in some South Asian communities. And it's tended to focus a lot on, particular sectors, be that construction, be that domestic work. So what I really noticed was that actually there's a gap, and for some of the reasons that have already been mentioned by previous speakers, whilst it's really important to address the issues around low-skilled migrant labour, there isn't really very much attention been paid to what's the experience of highly skilled migrant people, and particularly the women's experience. So I've been really interested in this in my own research, and also my practice as an academic. And I've been particularly interested to look at it with sustainability, because again, I've been surprised in the UAE. It's got a very prominent focus on sustainability and the UN SDGs. And some of you may know that one of the reasons why it's been doing that is because of the Dubai Expo 2020. This has been a very massive event that's been taking place over the last 6 months in Dubai, and it's really a way for the UAE to showcase, the best of all of the world's innovations. So there's more than 190 pavilions present at the Expo, and each one is focusing on, all aspects of technology, opportunity, mobility, sustainability, and linking it to that individual country strengths. And in the UAE, there's been a lot of attention on how to address this for the benefits of the UAE. So for example, there's a UAE net zero 2050 strategic initiative, which is looking at how to achieve net zero emissions by making the Emirates, or rather the UAE, the leading nation for this particular area. There's been another one which is looking at, energy strategies. And, also next year, the UAE is going to host COP28. And it's seen as to being, they really want to make it a solutions focused COP. So I was really interested to see how much will migrant labour feature in that, and particularly the skills of highly skilled migrants. Especially if we think that, the UAE is really keen to become a knowledge economy, and knowledge economy is obviously very, very relevant to the highly skilled category and how they will particularly contribute to society to make it so much more stronger. So I just thought it'd be really helpful to share a little bit, first of all, on the UAE in terms of its location and its regional significance. So the United Arab Emirates, it's one of the 6 countries that together form the Gulf Cooperation Council. And it's, it's quite a significant region. They often come together in terms of how they set policies on finance, on aspects of the way that the economy is developing, on the way that even labour is being sourced into different particular categories. And the GCC, as it's often called, it's the International Labour Organization has done a study, and it says that migrants in these 6 countries account for over 10% of all migrants globally. And Saudi Arabia has the 3rd largest migrant population in the world, and the UAE has the 5th largest. So, to say for its location, it's really a very significant location for migrant labour. And, in particular, the UAE, it's got a very successful economy. It's the 2nd largest economy in the GCC. And it's been diversifying this economy by really very aggressively aiming to attract a lot of Western companies to come and invest and set up in the UAE. And they've done this through, giving them 100% foreign ownership, and because, of course, taxation is made very, very attractive. Tourism has also led to the UAE becoming a very wealthy country, and also very much more open in terms of its attitudes and its liberal sort of engagement with many different countries. So all in all, it's become a real sort of hub, a global hub for the movement of people and for migrant people to come there to make careers, and also to live for long periods. And it's the largest consumer market as well. So I think within the Middle East, it's really interesting to see how it's becoming the hub of a lot of trade. In terms of the way it's attracting people, clearly the economy, to have such a booming economy, requires a lot of labour. And interestingly, it's attracted both low-skilled and high-skilled in order to support both the economic booms, but then also at times when the economy is not done so well, it's got ways of labour restrictions that ensures that the migrants can be also let go. So it's quite temporary, and that operates in particular regions. And it's heavily reliant on foreign labour in order to sustain this economic growth. And it's very sort of significant financial plans. But with this being a sort of a magnet for low-skilled and high-skilled, what's really interesting is that where are the largest groups? So I think many of you will know that it's got a very large expat population. Over 90% of the population of the UAE is an expatriate population. But the largest migrant group in that is South Asian. And interestingly, within that group, the labour market is quite sort of segmented according to ethnicity, nationality, skills. And what you notice is that there's a white European, Western expats tend to be sort of gravitating to certain sectors, and then you get groups from different African countries and from South Asian countries attracted to different groups. But that ethnicity and the national origin does seem to really be very, very starkly noticeable in that. And within that, you really see that there is, Dubai is very much divided. I'm focusing on Dubai. It's divided into regions where you notice that the highly skilled migrants tend to be working more. And so, for example, they call it free zones. And in the free zones, because of the way that a lot of companies and sectors are structured, it does mean that migrant labour is more attracted to the liberal organisational structures there, as opposed to some of the others, which tend to have these more stricter labour laws. One of the laws that I did want to just mention that some of you may know of, it's called kafala, and it's basically like a visa sponsorship system, and it's very much attracted more to the low-skilled migrant labour. And it's just worth knowing that it's kind of like it's been heavily criticised because it really ties the employee to the employer, and they can't actually move jobs without the consent of their employer. So it's quite restrictive, and it has been quite heavily criticised as such. So within the migrant labour, what you really notice is that there is a stark difference between men and women. So according to one of the 2018 report by the International Labour Organization, 72% of the migrant labour force was men and 28% were women. And within that category, there's two, the low-skilled women tend to be in the more sort of the domestic work or guest workers, and the high-skilled women, they're in corporate finance, they're in multinationals, they're in construction, and for my focus, they're in academia as well. Again, I think for many of these people, they tend to be very highly educated, so they've come directly into roles that often require very, very skilled requirements. So transnational education, this is education that's delivered in a country other than the country in which the awarding institution is based. So to give you the example of De Montfort University, so it's based in the UK, but it's got a branch campus now in Dubai, but the awards are very much, DMU, and those would be awarded by the university in the UK. And the UAE has really become a global hub for higher education. There's over 33 universities just in Dubai. That's just in one city, but as a location, the UAE is very attractive for higher education, and it's really because most of these campuses are set up in these free zones, where the campuses can create a feel that's very similar to the university's home institution. It does mean that students get quite a very enriched experience, which feels like it's the home institution, but it's been recreated there in Dubai. And of course, for many of these students, Dubai is a really strategically and quite geographically important location in terms of then after graduating, looking for jobs there. So in terms of what DMU is doing, so we've got a branch campus, and in that branch campus, we've got, over 20 programs running, both undergraduate and postgraduate. And when I first arrived there a year ago, a key task was to appoint a teaching team and a team to lead all these different programs. So we set about a very important recruitment exercise. And I was really interested to see, how many women applied, which was really fantastic, because obviously we're really keen to see, a strong representation of women. But interestingly, of the women group, the largest majority were Indian women. And so I did an informal survey with them, and there was about 15 of them. And I did a survey, question answers, and just looked at a little bit about their backgrounds and wanted to really understand what their experiences were. And what I was interested to know was that, you know, the majority were married, and they also had children. And interestingly, all of them had followed their husbands to the UAE to support them and to, to really to ensure that their careers were put forward first. So, you know, what I refer to them, and this is what some of the research will call it, is trailing spouse issues. So generally, you know, really experiencing that a sense of having to prioritize their husband's careers such time that they can establish themselves in a new country, and you know, make quite a sacrifice, really. Because all of these women I noticed were really well qualified, all hold PhDs, or you know, at least postgraduate qualifications, but all had come from senior or mid-career level jobs in India, and you know, to move to the UAE was a big step in terms of, you know, no longer working, and then some of them even thought about retraining because their skills were ideal for moving into academia. And interestingly, the reason why many of them chose academia was because of the hours, and it fits with family life, you know, and it was close to where they were living and everything. So, you know, the trailing spouse issues are very much related to them having to become the stable family support. But interestingly, within their experience as academics, they faced, you know, they were explaining that they were wanting more seniority, but sometimes felt quite discriminated in terms of the opportunities that they were presented. And they tended to be favouring, the perception was that it was the men that were getting better seniority, and also it was often with race as well. So they felt that white expat Westerners often got better jobs than they did, and they also felt that they were expected to work very long hours, you know, perhaps with only teaching contracts. They were not engaging in research, and there was a perception as well that, you know, they were hired as well because they wouldn't complain or make a fuss, and so they were just very good workers, and that was of a real issue for them. Yeah, and so, you know, what they talked a lot about was that it was really important that they had networking, because that was a way for them to really build support and contacts, especially as they were, you know, new to the country and they had to really set up a completely new way of life. So one of the things that I really wanted to look at the campus was how could we tap into this landscape of Dubai, where sustainability and sustainable development goals is really becoming very much part of the government's agenda, but how could we make it relevant as well to our teaching and our academic culture? So what we did was we approached gender equality by looking at these different SDGs, quality education, number 4, decent work and economic growth, reduced inequalities, and also peace, justice, and strong institutions. So we've been, you know, creating activities with the students within each different teaching sessions, but it's also been embedded within the curriculum. So every program has been reviewed, and you know, links have been found as to how can we connect with it. We've separately also organised events as well to raise the profile of gender equality, but using this nexus approach, so that, you know, for example, when we speak of gender equality, we should be talking about, you know, economic empowerment, and also to link it with entrepreneurship as well. So, you know, our view very much is around, you know, if women and girls represent half the population, that's half the potential. So how would we actually help to sort of mobilize that effort? So linking it to the employability agenda has been a really key way to kind of make that more real. So yeah, so just into close then, I'll just say that, you know, privilege is seen as being very sort of situational and very relational, but, you know, it does show this, I think, this short presentation that, you know, being highly skilled doesn't always mean that you're not going to be very empowered, or you're not going to get the emancipation that you would like through your role. And certainly for women, it's often about, you know, balancing the discrimination with their new situation and seeing how they can overcome that. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.